the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Walton, joined by Sergeant Walton. Clint, how are you?
I'm good.
You know, I think that as a police officer, no matter how big or how small of a department that you work in, there's always going to be that one call that you never really fully let go of. And Clint, being as open or as closed as you would like to be, I'm wondering what that call might have been for you.
Because I talk to my fellow officers all the time just to help them, whether they're going through something. And because ultimately, we always put on this shield of, oh, I'm good. And for the most part, everybody is, but there's always something that kind of jumps out and stands out to you as an individual. There's, surprisingly enough, the one that kind of comes to mind, it's not any criminal thing per se. It was a traffic accident. I mean, I've been exposed to a lot of stuff, but this one for me, and it just kind of, it's not like I think about it all the time. It's just something that it's there, and I recognize it because I witnessed it. And I think that's why it stands out to me a little bit more. Is me and another detective were working undercover and watching for this guy to exit this building, and then this car flew by us so fast and then hit a light pole and flipped and then exploded. It was something straight out of a movie. And then so we were like, okay, well, we have to go respond to this to see if we can help. The car was on fire. We run up to it. He was ejected, and then unfortunately, he succumbed to his injuries, and there's pieces of him everywhere. And it was one of those instances where it kind of stood out. And I think it was more so because, one, fortunately enough, he didn't hit any other vehicles. He didn't hurt anybody else. Yeah, he was driving like a moron, and he caused that accident himself. But it was one of those things. It was just like it was watching a movie, and the special effects and everything with it, because I ran up to the car trying to see if he was in there, and then we found him after the fact.
Yeah, you know, I'm going to actually explain the psychological concept here. It's called trauma encoding, and I'm thinking of a off-duty police officer who was with his kids, and he was driving on the highway, and he sees a car just engulfed in flames, and his first instinct was to pull over, and he told his girls to stay there. I think he told them to call 911. He jumps out. He ends up pulling the guy out of the burning vehicle and saving his life. And so that's a story. I'm bringing that up because he by mistake has told me that story maybe 4 or 5 times since I've known him. And it's because of this trauma encoding. And what that is it's how the brain actually records these high intensity events differently than normal memories. So in the instance for you, Clint, you're used to getting that call in and showing up after the event or the accident has taken place. But in this regard, you actually saw it taking place. So your brain was literally recording it because it was such a high intensity moment.
Yeah. And it's the best, I just had this kind of realization. It's like having a Tesla car, and it has the Sentry cameras, and it's literally turning it on and recording that event in your brain as it's happening. And that's why it stands out so much more.
We have something too called flashbulb memories, and they're super vivid. They're these sensory snapshots. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And it's where your mind captures these events during that overwhelm and that stress. So even if you're not remembering like a movie, what transpired, you can remember the images of, the man's remains all over the ground, or certain things that you might visualize when you think about it.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because as I was talking about it, you can your body starts responding to those situations in different ways too, and it's kind of going back to, in certain instances, smells can trigger an emotional and a psychological response to, if you smell a cologne that you're oh, that smells so good, and it brings you back to a happy time, to where your first date with your wife or whatever it may be. There's different things like that can bring forward those emotional responses.
Yeah, and actually in combination, the two, the trauma encoding and the flashbulb memories, this is why those certain smells or sounds or even images might bring you back. You might think about that night, and maybe it was the coldest night that you can remember. And so you remember the warmth of the jacket that you were wearing touching your skin, for example. Like, it's very interesting the way that our minds work.
Yeah, it's really crazy because like I could sit here and go through story after story, but the reality is there's certain ones that jump out at you even more so. Like, and this is what I tell my guys all the time is like, think of what's the most severe homicide you've ever been to, and I tell them, and I pause in that moment and say, hey, you had it come to your mind and you had to think about it, because they have that flashbulb type memory that comes forward.
Yeah. And, we have to think about our bodies and our minds. The number one goal is to keep us alive. And so your brain isn't malfunctioning. It's literally protecting you when this happens, because those memories are remaining sharp, since at the time that it happened, your mind or your body believed that it was essential for survival. So that's why it's captured in the way that it is.
Yeah, and it's so, especially when you start having this realization and you recognize how you're responding to that incident. And ultimately, and this is something that we've talked about numerous times, is it's not about you in that dynamic. It's not about you in that instance, but it does affect you because you were there, you experienced it.
Another thing for you to think about, Clint, is it's really interesting to have this perspective of knowing that, okay, this was an instance where the traumatic event, the thing that normally people would call 911 for after, took place right in front of my eyes. And so typically there are reasons why these sort of calls stay with us forever. And usually you show up to a scene after you've been called and you're the one that shows up and is in total control. But in an instance like that, you're just so happened to be a bystander during an event to where you had absolutely nothing that you can do. You felt helpless, you're powerless. And this is why things are so imprinted.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it's cool to think of, and like you're that bystander in that instance, but then you step in and then you take control over it. It goes from being the bystander, the witness, to being, okay, this is my scene, let's go.
Something else that's interesting to think about is I'm thinking about all the parents out there who work as first responders, and they show up to this tragic call involving a child, let's say a young infant, and they internalize it and it becomes incredibly difficult and emotional for them. And that's because a lot of the times our brain is going to personalize that trauma when it overlaps with your emotional world. So this happened to this little 3-year-old. I have a little 3-year-old at home, and then it becomes very difficult for our minds to be able to compartmentalize and to distinguish the two.
Yeah, and I think over time, especially for different dynamics of working like specialized crimes or crimes against children, and you have parents who are investigating these types of crimes all the time, and you're seeing it, and then that's like California Post has a requirement that you're not supposed to be doing it over 4 years because of the impact it can have on you.
And I think there are a lot of ways for us to be able to sort of heal that call that still lives inside of you. Not to say that it's a bad thing that it does, but if it becomes something that's bothersome or cumbersome, or it's just on repeat constantly, or having other impacts in your life, like you're having difficulty being able to sleep, for example, or it's the first thing that you think about when you wake up, then chances are there might be some work that needs to be done there. And first of all, I think that we need to let go of the myth that you should be over it. I don't think that any kind of trauma has a timeline, and it's okay that those types of feelings exist. It's literally now wired into you. And I think that sometimes one of the easiest things is to literally just find a thing that works for you. I know one of my not a call, but my things is having worked for somebody for as long as I did that was doing the most evil things that she was. And so I have a lot of things that I'm probably not allowed to say on here in terms of visualization techniques that I literally use to be able to blast that right out of my mind. And so there are small things and techniques like that that really do make a big difference to where it's not ruminating around in your mind.
Yeah, and it's having those processes, that's having these activities to be able to like when I get in my truck, I do with intention a certain routine that gets me out of that mindset to be like, okay, let's go home. Let's enjoy the rest of the day.
And a lot of people don't realize that any kind of trauma, and we'll use the word trauma, although it could be a small extent or a larger extent, depending on the situation, it actually leaves through your body. And so it's important to focus on techniques that use your body in order to be able to release them. Even something as simple as breath work or grounding or stretching. There's so many different things that we can do, but it takes the work.
Yeah, putting in the work is important because you're going to set yourself up for success in the future, especially for the next incident that will come along.
Yeah, totally. And some people are a little bit more tangible, a little bit more intentional, and it could be something as simple as writing a letter or visiting a location. Of course, praying. You can light a candle and then blow it out. There's so many modalities that we can turn to. I think it's just about finding what works best for you. I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below. And as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.